Do not worry, ma'am. We will try not to scare you. Officer Derek Collins smiled toward the camera as laughter rolled across the police training gym. Vanessa Brooks stood beside a rehabilitation machine with a small tool case in one hand, her faded work shirt still marked with dust from the morning route. She did not look at the officers laughing. She looked at rookie officer Hannah Price, whose right knee was trembling beneath the resistance strap. Turn the machine off, Vanessa said. The laughter stopped for half a second, then returned louder. Derek leaned toward the tripod holding his phone. Did everyone hear that? The repair woman is giving medical orders now. Vanessa's eyes remained on Hannah. The young officer was trying to hide her pain, but her breathing had become shallow, and one side of her body was carrying more weight than the other. Something was wrong, and Vanessa knew the next few seconds mattered. Subscribe now for more stories about courage, justice, and the strength people often overlook. Captain Thomas Rourke stood near the mirrored wall with his arms folded, watching the scene as if humiliation were another approved training exercise. Behind him, framed photographs of decorated officers covered the wall, each face frozen beneath bright gym lights. Vanessa had entered the building only 10 minutes earlier to inspect a knee rehabilitation unit reported as defective. She had expected a loose cable, a damaged sensor, perhaps a simple calibration problem. Instead, she found Hannah strapped into the machine while Derek increased the resistance for his recording. The equipment is fine, Vanessa said. The alignment is wrong. Derek glanced at the machine, then back at her. You have been here 5 minutes. That was enough. His smile tightened. Several officers exchanged amused looks. Vanessa stepped closer and pointed toward Hannah's foot without touching her. Her ankle is turning outward. The pressure is traveling into the knee instead of the hip. If you keep increasing resistance, she could re-injure it. Hannah lowered her eyes. That small reaction told Vanessa everything. You were already hurt before today, she said gently. Hannah hesitated, then nodded. Derek turned toward her. You told me you were cleared. I was, Hannah answered, though her voice lacked certainty. Then continue, Rourke said. Vanessa looked at the captain. He had not asked where the pain was. He had not checked the machine. He had only heard hesitation and treated it like disobedience. Derek reached toward the control panel. Vanessa placed her hand over the emergency stop button first. The machine powered down with a quiet mechanical sigh. The room went still. Derek stared at her hand. Take that off. Not until she is released. You are a technician. And she is telling you she is in pain. Derek stepped between Vanessa and the machine, using his height and uniform like another piece of equipment designed to control the space. People come in here to fix what we tell them to fix. They do not walk into our gym and tell officers how to train. Vanessa finally looked directly at him. His badge reflected the white overhead light, sharp and polished against black fabric. Then you should have called someone who does not notice when people are being ignored. A few officers stopped smiling. Hannah slowly removed the strap from her leg. Derek noticed the camera was still recording and seemed to remember the audience waiting behind it. He turned, picked up a pair of padded training gloves, and placed them on the edge of the mat. All right, he said. You seem to know a lot about control. Why do you not show us? Vanessa felt the old metal whistle beneath her shirt touch the center of her chest. She had not worn it openly in more than 20 years. No one in the room knew what it meant. No one knew why she had checked every exit when she entered, or why she could recognize an unstable knee from 30 feet away. She closed her tool case and looked at Hannah, not Derek. The young officer was rubbing the side of her leg, ashamed that everyone had seen her weakness. Vanessa understood that shame. She also understood the danger of letting powerful people teach others that pain should remain silent. Derek lifted the gloves and smiled for the camera. Come on, ma'am. Unless fixing machines is the only thing you are brave enough to do. Vanessa set her tool case on the floor. The whistle beneath her shirt shifted again, catching a narrow line of light. Then she stepped toward the mat. Vanessa stopped at the edge of the mat, but she did not reach for the gloves. Derek held them out as though he were offering her a choice, yet everyone in the room understood that the choice had already been shaped by the laughter, the camera, and the way Captain Rourke watched without intervening. I am not here to perform, Vanessa said. Derek tilted his head. Then why step forward? Vanessa looked past him toward Hannah, who had moved to a bench and was pressing both hands around her knee. Because she should not have been pushed past her limit. Rourke unfolded his arms. Officer Price was following instructions. Pain is information, Vanessa replied. Ignoring it does not make someone stronger. The word settled over the gym, and for the first time, several officers looked less entertained than uncertain. Vanessa had heard that silence before. It was the silence that came when people realized the person they had dismissed might know more than they did. She had spent years avoiding that moment. Her mornings now began before 5, with a thermos of coffee, a route sheet, and the sound of her father's walker moving slowly across the apartment floor. By 7, she was usually tightening braces, calibrating recovery equipment, and checking machines in clinics across the city. By noon, she drove her father to physical therapy twice a week, waited through every session, then took him home and prepared dinner before the evening medications. It was a quiet life built from responsibility, not ambition. Her faded work shirt, worn boots, and small service van made people assume they understood her. Most days, she let them. It was easier than explaining the metal whistle beneath her shirt or the old scar across her left palm. Easier than saying she once stood in rooms filled with police recruits, firefighters, and emergency response teams who waited for her instructions before they moved. That life had ended a long time ago. Or at least she had believed it had. Derek set the gloves on the mat. You keep talking about limits, he said. But you do not know what this job requires. Vanessa's gaze moved across the room. The walls were lined with photographs of officers holding trophies, completing obstacle courses, and standing beneath banners about strength and control. There were no photographs of anyone stopping. No images of an instructor listening to a frightened recruit. No reminders that discipline without judgment could become something colder. I know what happens when people confuse endurance with wisdom, she said. Rourke gave a short, humorless laugh. That sounds like something from a training manual. Vanessa looked at him. Good manuals are usually written after someone gets hurt. Hannah lifted her head. Her expression carried surprise, but also relief. Someone had finally said aloud what she had been too afraid to admit. Derek noticed and turned toward her. Do not let her make you doubt yourself. She did not, Hannah said softly. My knee has been hurting for 3 days. The room changed. It was a small confession, but it weakened the story Derek had been trying to control. He looked toward the camera, then back at Vanessa. You are turning this into something it is not. Vanessa's voice remained calm. I turned off a machine. You turned it into an audience. One officer near the lockers lowered his eyes. Another shifted away from the tripod. Rourke stepped closer, his polished shoes stopping just beyond the mat. Ms. Brooks, finish your inspection and leave the training to the department. Vanessa felt the whistle against her chest again. Once, that sound had meant everyone stopped, looked, and listened. Now it remained hidden under a shirt no one respected. She bent down, picked up the padded gloves, and placed them neatly on the bench. I will finish the inspection, she said. After Hannah is evaluated by medical staff. Derek moved into her path. You do not give orders here. Vanessa met his eyes without raising her voice. Then consider it a warning. His expression tightened. Behind him, Hannah tried to stand and immediately caught herself against the bench. Vanessa moved toward her. Derek did not. That single difference told the room more about strength than anything written on the walls. Vanessa reached Hannah before the young officer's second step failed. She did not grab her or make a scene. She simply offered one steady arm and guided her back to the bench. Sit down, she said. Keep your foot flat and do not lock the knee. Hannah obeyed without hesitation. Derek watched from the mat, his jaw tightening as if every practical instruction stole something from him. Captain Rourke glanced toward the camera, then toward the officers gathered near the mirrored wall. The room had been built to reward certainty, and Vanessa had introduced doubt. This has gone far enough, Rourke said. Officer Price can visit medical after training. Vanessa crouched beside Hannah and checked the position of the brace without touching the swollen area. Training is over for her today. You do not decide that. Vanessa looked up. Her body already did. A few officers shifted uncomfortably. They had seen Hannah struggle before. They had heard her say she was fine because that was the answer expected from rookies who wanted to graduate. Derek stepped closer. She passed her clearance. Clearance is not permission to ignore new pain. You think you know this program because you service the equipment. Vanessa rose slowly. The old whistle beneath her shirt pressed against her chest. She could feel the edge of it through the fabric, cool and familiar. For years, she had kept it hidden because people asked questions when they saw it. Where did you get that? What did you teach? Why did you leave? The last question was always the hardest. I know the machine is calibrated correctly, she said. I know her alignment is not. And I know you increased resistance after she began compensating. Derek looked toward the control panel. The digital display still showed the last setting. He had forgotten it was visible. Hannah lowered her voice. I told him it felt wrong yesterday. The confession moved through the room like a draft under a closed door. Rourke's expression hardened, not at Derek, but at Hannah. Why did you not report it formally? Hannah looked down at her hands. I did not want to be removed from the program. Vanessa understood immediately. Fear had done what pain could not. It had kept her silent. That is the problem, Vanessa said. Rourke turned toward her. Excuse me. If someone believes telling the truth will cost them their place, then your system is not measuring courage. It is measuring obedience. The gym became quiet enough to hear the ventilation fans above the lockers. Derek stepped between Vanessa and Hannah again. You are making serious accusations. I am describing what is in front of me. You came here to repair equipment. His eyes moved over her faded shirt, worn boots, and dark skin before returning to her face. Stay in your lane. The words were quiet, but everyone heard them. Vanessa had heard versions of that sentence in offices, training halls, and waiting rooms all her life. Sometimes it came with a smile. Sometimes with a badge. The meaning rarely changed. People like her were expected to serve, fix, carry, and disappear, but never correct. She let the silence expose it. Hannah looked at Derek with disappointment. One officer near the wall turned away from the camera. Another lowered his arms. Rourke should have stopped the moment there, but pride had already taken control. Derek, he said, show Ms. Brooks why field judgment cannot be learned from a toolbox. Derek's smile returned. He reached for the padded gloves on the bench and tossed one pair onto the mat. Vanessa did not look at them. I am not here to prove anything to you. Then leave. Vanessa glanced at Hannah. The young officer was trying to hide the relief in her face, as though even gratitude might be judged. Vanessa picked up her tool case, and for one moment Derek believed he had won. Then she carried it to the wall, set it down, and removed her work jacket. The whistle cord shifted at her collar but remained hidden. She turned toward Rourke. Hannah leaves the mat. The resistance machine stays off. And the moment anyone says stop, everything stops. Derek laughed once. Those are your conditions. Those are the rules. Rourke looked around the room, aware that backing down now would make him appear weak. He nodded. Fine. Vanessa stepped onto the mat. She did not raise her hands. She only studied Derek's balance, the angle of his shoulders, and the impatient rhythm of his breathing. Across from her, he mistook stillness for fear. Around them, the officers closed into a circle. None of them noticed the way Vanessa's posture changed, or how the woman they had dismissed as a technician suddenly seemed to understand every inch of the room. The circle tightened around the mat, but Vanessa did not move. Derek bounced lightly on the balls of his feet, confident that speed and pressure would force her into the kind of reaction the camera could use. Captain Rourke stood near the tripod with one hand resting on his belt, watching the room more than the people inside it. Hannah remained on the bench, her injured knee supported, her eyes fixed on Vanessa. You can still walk away, Derek said. So can you, Vanessa replied. A few officers glanced at one another. Derek's smile thinned. He stepped forward and reached toward her shoulder in a controlled training motion. Vanessa shifted only a few inches, allowing his hand to pass without contact. There was nothing dramatic about it. No sudden display. Just timing. Derek tried again, changing his angle. Vanessa turned with him, keeping the same quiet distance. The rubber mat whispered beneath their shoes. The phone camera captured every second. "Stop avoiding me," Derek said. "I am following the rules," Vanessa answered. "You said this was about control." Rourke gave a short laugh from the edge of the mat. "Control requires engagement." Vanessa looked at him. "Control begins before engagement." Derek moved closer, more determined now. He expected resistance, but she gave him none to push against. Each time he reached, she changed position just enough to make the attempt meaningless. The officers who had been smiling began to watch more carefully. Hannah noticed Vanessa's breathing first. Slow. Even. Unchanged. Derek's breathing was different. Faster than before. Pride had entered the exercise and was carrying him farther than judgment. Vanessa saw his right foot turn slightly inward. She also saw the impatience in his shoulders. "Reset your stance," she said. Derek paused. "Do not coach me. Then listen to your body." The words landed harder than an insult because there was no anger in them. Derek looked toward the camera, aware of the audience waiting for him to regain control. He stepped forward again, this time with more force than the exercise required. Vanessa moved aside and placed one open hand near his forearm, guiding him past her without twisting or pulling. He caught himself and turned quickly. A murmur spread through the room. Rourke lifted his chin. "Keep going." Hannah looked at him. "Captain," she said, "the moment someone says stop, everything stops." "No one has said stop," Rourke replied. Vanessa heard the fear beneath Hannah's words. Not fear for herself this time. Fear that the same rules were about to be broken again. Derek raised his hands and approached once more. Vanessa lowered her voice. "Your weight is too far forward. You are stalling. I am warning you." He ignored her. His next step placed too much pressure on one side, and his balance shifted. Vanessa reacted before he could lose control. She caught his arm, redirected his movement, and guided him safely down to a seated position on the mat. There was no impact, no injury, only the sudden silence of a room that had expected spectacle and received precision instead. Vanessa released him immediately and stepped back. Derek stared up at her, more shocked than hurt. "Are you finished?" she asked. He looked around at the officers who had stopped laughing. Shame tightened his expression. "Again," he said. Vanessa shook her head. "You lost balance. The exercise is over." Rourke stepped onto the mat. He did not say stop. He did not need to, Vanessa replied. "I saw the risk." Derek pushed himself upright, his face warm with embarrassment. "You got lucky." Vanessa's eyes moved to the phone, then to Hannah, then back to him. Luck is what people call awareness when they do not recognize it. One officer near the lockers lowered his gaze. Another quietly moved away from the circle. Rourke's expression hardened. "You think this proves something?" Vanessa looked at the room, at the trophies, the mirrored walls, and the camera that had turned training into entertainment. "It proves that none of you asked why she was hurting before you asked her to continue." Hannah swallowed and looked down. The old whistle beneath Vanessa's shirt shifted as she breathed. Derek heard the small metal tap against the button of her work shirt. He noticed it for the first time. "What is that?" he asked. Vanessa's hand rose instinctively toward her collar, but she stopped before touching it. "Nothing you need to know." The gym doors opened behind them. Heavy footsteps crossed the tile, followed by a voice that made every officer straighten before they even turned. "I believe that whistle belongs to someone I do know." Police Chief Michael Grant stood in the doorway, one hand resting on the frame as the room snapped into silence. He was 60 years old, broad-shouldered, silver at the temples, and known throughout the department for speaking softly enough that people leaned in to hear him. Derek straightened immediately. Captain Rourke stepped away from the mat. Vanessa did neither. She remained where she was, one hand near the collar of her work shirt, the old whistle resting beneath her fingers. Grant looked at the metal edge visible against the fabric, then at her face. Something passed through his expression that no one else in the room understood. Recognition. Regret. Respect. May I see it? He asked. Vanessa held his gaze for a long moment before pulling the cord over her head. The whistle was small, worn smooth at the corners, and darkened with age. A faded emblem had been stamped into one side. She placed it in his open palm. Grant turned it beneath the fluorescent lights. His thumb traced the old mark as if confirming a memory he had spent years trying not to lose. Emergency Response Training Program, he said quietly. Hannah looked toward Derek. Derek looked toward Rourke. Neither man spoke. Grant lifted his eyes to Vanessa. Instructor Brooks. Vanessa's expression tightened. That was a long time ago. Not long enough for me to forget. Rourke cleared his throat. Chief, Ms. Brooks came to inspect equipment. There was a disagreement about procedure. Grant glanced at the tripod and the phone still recording. A disagreement. Derek stepped forward. She interrupted a training session and challenged department instruction. Vanessa did not defend herself. She looked toward Hannah instead. The young officer still sat with her knee supported, her hands wrapped tightly around the edge of the bench. Grant followed Vanessa's gaze. Officer Price, are you injured? Hannah hesitated. Rourke's posture changed almost imperceptibly, but Vanessa noticed. So did Grant. You can answer freely, the chief said. Hannah took a breath. My knee has been hurting for 3 days, sir. I said something yesterday, but I was afraid I would be removed from the program. The silence that followed was different from the earlier silence. This one carried consequence. Grant looked at Derek. Did she tell you? Derek's confidence weakened. She said it was sore. She had medical clearance. That was not my question. Derek glanced toward Rourke, but the captain offered no help. Yes, sir. Grant turned to Vanessa. And you stopped the machine? Yes. Why? Because pain is a warning, not a character test. Grant closed his fingers around the whistle. The words seemed to reach somewhere deep in him. You still say it the same way. Vanessa's eyes hardened slightly. Some lessons do not change. Derek looked between them. Chief, you know her. Grant faced the room. Before I wore this badge, I trained under her. A few officers shifted in surprise. Rourke's expression became unreadable. Grant continued. She taught emergency response teams, defensive tactics instructors, and crisis units across 3 states. More importantly, she taught people when not to use force, when to stop, and how to recognize fear before it became panic. Vanessa looked away. Praise had never sat comfortably on her, especially when it came from institutions that had once allowed her to carry blame alone. Grant stepped closer and offered the whistle back. I have not heard this sound in 22 years. Vanessa did not take it immediately. There was a reason. I know. His voice lowered. And I should have spoken sooner. The room seemed to contract around those words. Derek glanced at the camera, suddenly aware that whatever story he had expected to record was no longer his to control. Grant looked at the gloves on the mat, then at Vanessa's work case against the wall. What happened here? Rourke answered first. We were conducting an instructional demonstration. Hannah looked down. Vanessa said nothing. Grant studied the faces around him, the amusement gone, the certainty gone, the room stripped of performance. Then he looked at the phone. Play the recording from the beginning. Derek's face lost color. Rourke's hand moved toward the tripod, but Grant stopped him with one sentence. Do not touch it. No one moved. The only sound came from the ventilation system and Hannah's careful breathing. Grant turned back to Vanessa, held the whistle between both hands, and bowed his head. When he spoke again, he used the word that made every officer in the gym look at her differently. Master. The word settled over the gym with more force than any command Grant had ever given. Derek stared at Vanessa as though the faded work shirt had changed before his eyes. Rourke looked toward the floor. Hannah's hands loosened around the edge of the bench, and the officers nearest the mirrored wall stood straighter without being told. Vanessa did not accept the title with pride. She looked at Grant with a sadness that made the room feel smaller. Do not call me that, she said. Grant lifted his head. Why? Because I stopped believing I deserved it. No one spoke. Grant still held the whistle in both hands, the metal resting across his palms like an unfinished apology. You left because of what happened to Daniel Morris, he said. Vanessa's gaze moved toward the bright floor beneath the tripod. He trusted my program. He ignored your stop signal. I should have ended the session sooner. You did. Grant's voice remained calm, but something old and personal moved beneath it. You ended it the moment you saw he was no longer thinking clearly. The review board knew that. Vanessa looked at him. The report said I failed to maintain control. The report protected people with higher ranks. Rourke shifted uncomfortably. The sentence reached him even though Grant never turned his way. Vanessa folded her arms, not defensively, but as if holding together memories she had spent 22 years keeping quiet. She remembered the old training hall, the sharp sound of the whistle, and the terrible silence afterward. She remembered sitting alone while administrators asked why she had not anticipated another adult's pride. She remembered watching Grant, then a young recruit, stand outside the hearing room and say nothing because he had been warned that defending her could end his career before it began. Grant seemed to hear the memory between them. I was afraid, he said. The admission surprised everyone. Police chiefs did not usually confess fear in front of officers. I knew the report was dishonest. I knew you had warned us. But I wanted the badge more than I wanted the truth. Vanessa's expression did not soften immediately. And you got it? Yes. Grant looked down at the whistle. I spent years telling myself I would correct the record when I had enough authority. Then I became captain. Then deputy chief. Then chief. Every promotion gave me more power and fewer excuses, but I still waited. The ventilation system hummed above them. Somewhere beyond the gym doors, a telephone rang and stopped. Inside the room, no one moved. Derek glanced toward Hannah. For the first time, he seemed to understand that silence could injure people without leaving a mark anyone could photograph. Grant stepped closer to Vanessa. You taught me that power reveals character. I used mine to protect my future. Vanessa finally reached for the whistle, but instead of taking it, she closed Grant's fingers around it. Then use it correctly now. Grant nodded. He turned toward the tripod. Officer Collins, step away from the recording. Derek obeyed. Captain Rourke, training is suspended until the full session is reviewed. Officer Price will be evaluated by medical staff without penalty to her status. Hannah released a breath she had been holding. Rourke opened his mouth. Chief, this can be handled internally. Grant faced him. It became internal the moment everyone in this room decided her pain was less important than the appearance of control. His eyes moved across. Every officer. That includes those who laughed, those who recorded, and those who stayed silent. Vanessa watched shame pass through the room, but she did not enjoy it. Shame alone had never taught anyone enough. She walked to Hannah and crouched beside the bench. Can you stand if we support you? Hannah nodded. Vanessa offered one arm while another officer quietly approached from the opposite side. Together, they helped her rise without rushing. Derek stepped forward as though he wanted to assist, then stopped, uncertain whether he had earned the right. Vanessa saw him hesitate. Bring her brace, she said. He moved immediately. It was a small task, but for the first time that morning, he followed an instruction meant to protect someone rather than impress an audience. Grant watched Vanessa guide Hannah toward the door. Master Brooks, he called again, more softly this time. Vanessa paused but did not turn. That title was never about being obeyed, she said. It was about knowing when to listen. Then she walked beside Hannah into the hallway, leaving the officers alone with the recording, the whistle, and the silence they had created. The hallway outside the gym felt cooler, quieter, and somehow more honest than the room they had left behind. Hannah moved carefully between Vanessa and the officer carrying her brace, her weight measured one step at a time. Grant followed several feet behind, still holding the whistle. Derek came last. He carried Hannah's equipment case with both hands, no camera, no jokes, no audience to perform for. At the medical office, Vanessa helped Hannah sit and explained what she had observed. The clinician listened, examined the knee, and confirmed that the joint had been under unnecessary strain. There was no catastrophic damage, but there was enough inflammation to require rest, treatment, and a temporary pause from training. Hannah looked relieved until she heard the word pause. "Will I lose my place?" she asked. Grant answered before anyone else could. "No," his voice was firm. "You will recover, and the program will adjust." Hannah stared at him as though she had expected a different answer her entire career. Vanessa rested one hand on the back of the chair. "Healing is not failure," she said. "Pretending pain does not exist is not courage." Derek lowered his eyes. The words were not directed at him, but he received them anyway. Grant asked the officer beside him to remain with Hannah, then motioned for Vanessa, Derek, and Rourke to return to the gym. Rourke had stayed behind near the recording, rigid beneath the fluorescent lights. When they entered, the video was still paused on the first frame, Derek smiling beside the tripod while Vanessa stood near the machine. Grant pressed play. The room heard every laugh again. They heard Vanessa's warning. They heard Hannah admit that she had been hurting. They heard Derek tell Vanessa to stay in her lane. This time, the sentence sounded uglier without the protection of laughter around it. Derek's face tightened. Rourke watched himself stand silent while the moment grew worse. Grant stopped the video. "What did you see when she walked into this room?" he asked. Derek did not answer. "A technician," Rourke said. Grant looked at him. "Only that." Rourke's silence gave the true answer. Vanessa stood near the wall, her arms relaxed, her expression unreadable. She did not need them to confess what she had already understood. Grant turned to Derek. "You saw a black woman in a work shirt and decided she had nothing to teach you." Derek swallowed. "Yes, sir." The honesty came slowly, but it came. "I thought she was beneath the room." Vanessa met his eyes. "Rooms do not decide who belongs. People do." Derek nodded, ashamed. "I am sorry." Vanessa did not rescue him from the discomfort. An apology matters when it changes what you do next. Grant turned toward Rourke. "And you?" The captain looked at the paused image of himself near the mirrored wall. "I let it continue." "Why?" "Because I thought stopping it would make me look weak." Grant's expression hardened with recognition. "That is the same excuse I used 22 years ago." The two men stood in the same silence, separated by rank but joined by the same failure. Grant placed the whistle on the bench between them. "Training authority is suspended pending review. The recording will be preserved. No one edits it, deletes it, or controls the story around it." Rourke nodded once. Derek looked toward Vanessa. "What happens to us now?" She glanced at the trophies, the slogans, and the empty mat where the room had tried to make her small. "That depends on whether you want punishment or change." Grant stepped closer. "What would change look like?" Vanessa looked toward the doorway where Hannah had disappeared. "Every stop signal is honored. Pain is reported without penalty. Cameras are used to review instruction, not humiliate people. And every instructor learns that authority is a responsibility before it is a privilege." Grant listened without interrupting. Then he picked up the whistle and extended it toward her. "Help me build that." Vanessa did not take it. Not yet. She looked at Derek and Rourke, two men who had finally begun to understand that the room had not made them powerful. It had only revealed what they did with power. "I will help," she said. "But first, they need to watch the whole recording without looking away." They watched the recording from beginning to end. No one spoke over it. No one explained away the laughter, the camera, or the moment Hannah admitted she had been in pain for 3 days. When Derek's voice told Vanessa to stay in her lane, he looked down. When Rourke heard himself defend the session instead of the recruit, his shoulders lowered. The video ended on a still image of Vanessa standing beside Hannah while the rest of the room watched. Grant let the silence remain. "That is what power looks like when no one questions it," Vanessa said. Derek raised his eyes. "I thought I was teaching confidence." "You were teaching people to hide pain so they would not disappoint you." Rourke stepped closer to the screen. "I let the room reward it." Vanessa nodded. "Yes." She did not soften the truth, but she did not use it as a weapon. Grant turned off the monitor. "The formal review begins today." Captain Rourke, you are removed from training supervision until it is complete. Officer Collins, you will not lead another session until you finish retraining and the review board clears you. Derek accepted the words without protest. Rourke did the same. Consequences did not erase what happened, but they made it impossible to pretend nothing had happened. Grant looked at Vanessa. I want your standards in writing. She glanced at the whistle still resting on the bench. Standards are easy to write. Then tell me what makes them real. Vanessa looked toward the doorway leading to the medical office. The first person who says stop has to be believed. The newest recruit has to know the rule protects them as much as it protects the chief. Instructors must be evaluated on judgment, not just performance. And cameras must never become an audience for humiliation. Grant nodded once. Done. Vanessa shook her head. Not done. Started. The correction landed gently, but everyone understood it. Derek stepped toward her. I owe Hannah an apology. You owe her changed behavior. Both, he said. Vanessa studied him for a moment, then nodded. Rourke looked at Grant. And what do I owe? Grant answered before Vanessa could. The truth about why you allowed it. Rourke took a slow breath. I believed fear made people sharper. I thought if recruits could not handle pressure in this room, they would fail outside it. Vanessa looked at him. Pressure can teach. Humiliation teaches silence. Rourke absorbed the distinction without defending himself. For the first time that morning, he looked less like a captain protecting authority and more like a man recognizing the cost of how he had used it. The gym door opened, and Hannah returned with a supportive brace around her knee. A clinician walked beside her. Derek immediately stepped away from the center of the room, giving her space instead of demanding attention. Hannah, he said, I am sorry I did not listen when you told me something was wrong. She held his gaze. I needed you to believe me before someone else had to prove it. Derek nodded. You are right. Rourke removed his training badge from the lanyard around his neck and placed it on the bench. I failed you too. Hannah looked from him to Vanessa. What happens now? Vanessa crossed the room and stopped several feet away from her. Now you heal. Then you return when your body is ready. Not when someone's pride is impatient. Hannah's eyes filled, but she smiled. Grant picked up the whistle and offered it to Vanessa again. This time, she took it. The metal rested in her palm, familiar and heavy with everything she had lost. Grant stood straight before her. Will you teach us again? Vanessa looked at Derek, Rourke, Hannah, and the officers who had stayed to face the truth. I will teach one class, she said. After that, we will see whether this room has learned how to listen. Grant placed one hand over his heart and bowed. Derek followed. Then Rourke. The other officers did the same, not because rank required it, but because respect finally did. 3 months later, the training gym opened before sunrise for a class no one in the department had expected to see. The mirrored walls were still there, but the old slogan about domination had been removed. In its place, a simple line stretched above the mat, strength begins with listening. Vanessa stood near the center of the room wearing the same faded work shirt she had worn the day they mocked her. The whistle rested against her chest, no longer hidden. Hannah sat in the front row with her knee fully recovered, her posture steady and her expression calm. Derek sat beside her without a phone, without gloves, and without the confidence he once used as armor. Rourke stood at the back of the room under observation from the review board, no longer in charge of the program but allowed to attend as part of his retraining. Grant waited near the doorway, giving Vanessa the space that had once been denied to her. She looked across the officers and recruits gathered before her. Today is not about proving who is strongest, she said. It is about learning what strength is for. No one shifted. No one laughed. Vanessa asked Hannah to stand and explain what had happened after the gym incident. Hannah told the room that she had completed treatment, returned to training, and reported pain without fear of losing her position. She said the new policy required every instructor to honor a stop signal immediately and document the reason before continuing. Derek listened with his hands folded. When Hannah finished, he stood. I was the reason she believed silence was safer than honesty, he said. I thought pressure made people better. I was wrong. Vanessa did not praise him for admitting it. She only asked, "What will you do differently?" Derek looked toward the recruits. "I will listen before I judge. I will stop before pride makes the decision for me. And I will not use someone else's fear to make myself look strong." Rourke spoke next. His voice was quieter than anyone remembered. "I protected the culture because it protected my authority. I told myself humiliation was discipline. It was not." Grant watched him carefully. The review had removed Rourke from supervisory duties for 6 months and required him to rebuild trust before leading again. The consequence remained, but so did the possibility of change. Vanessa walked to the edge of the mat and placed the whistle on a small table. "A rule means nothing if it only protects the powerful," she said. "The newest recruit, the technician, the injured officer, and the chief must all be heard under the same standard." Grant stepped forward and handed her a folder containing the department's new training policy. Her recommendations had become permanent: pain reports without retaliation, camera use limited to instruction and accountability, mandatory intervention when a stop signal was ignored, and regular reviews led by people outside the chain of command. Vanessa held the folder for a moment, then gave it back. "Do not let this become paper on a shelf." "It will not," Grant said. "Then prove it every day." The class began without spectacle. Vanessa taught them how to recognize panic before it became danger, how to slow a room instead of controlling it through fear, and how to protect dignity while maintaining order. Hannah demonstrated the new stop procedure. Derek paused the instant she raised her hand. No one mocked him for stopping. No one called her weak for asking. At the end of the session, Grant stepped aside and bowed to Vanessa once more. This time, the officers followed, not because he ordered them to, but because they understood what the title meant. Vanessa picked up the whistle, but she did not blow it. The room had already gone silent on its own. She looked at the people who had once decided her value by her skin, her work shirt, and the tools in her hand. They had learned that authority could demand obedience, but only character could earn respect. Kindness had not made her weak. Restraint had not made her passive. Listening had not made the department softer. It had made everyone safer. Vanessa turned off the lights and walked toward the door as the morning sun entered through the high windows. Behind her, Derek helped Hannah put away the equipment, Rourke reviewed the new policy, and Grant watched the room begin again under different rules. The real victory was not that they finally called her master. It was that they finally understood why. And if you were given power over someone who had less of it, would you use that power to make them smaller, or would you use it to help them stand?